They say emotions make you human. They say you should listen to your heart, express what you feel, and never bottle things up. But Niccolo Machiavelli, he didn't buy into any of that, because he understood a harsh truth that most people never really come to grips with. The more emotions you show, the more others can control you. Feelings make you predictable. When you're sensitive and open, it's like wearing a leash that anyone can pull. Love someone too loudly, they'll use it against you. Care too openly, they'll test where your limits really are. Show fear too obviously, they'll exploit it. And if you react too fast, they win without even trying. Machiavelli wasn't just a master politician, he was a master of himself. Because no strategy in the world can save you if your emotions can be hijacked at any moment. From day one, we're taught that openness means honesty, that feeling something deeply is truth, and that vulnerability equals strength. But every time you got emotional, someone found a way to use it. Maybe you forgave too fast, overreacted, and appeared unstable, begged for closure that never came, or let someone remember your deepest secrets to weaponize them later. The cost: your feelings didn't free you, they handed others the keys to your cage. Machiavelli didn't live in an age of therapy or overexposure. He lived in courts packed with betrayal, bribery, and bloodshed. He saw friends turn into enemies, allies switch sides, and kings topple because they trusted the wrong smile. In that world, being emotional was a luxury you simply couldn't afford, not even a little. Here's the crux: people are driven by two main feelings, love and fear. Machiavelli knew that to be feared, you had to feel less, because when you feel deeply, you become predictable. Your anger is easy to spark, your silence screams what you're thinking, your love becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. Reactive people speak before they think, move before they observe, and respond before they plan. They need validation, chase feelings, and hand over control of their self-worth like it's a gift. They're easy to disarm. Throughout history, the most dangerous people shared one thing: they were unmoved by slander, unaffected by affection, and unapologetically detached from how others felt about them. They weren't cold, they were self-contained. That's what Machiavelli was striving for. Not to be robotic or monstrous, but to be someone who couldn't be shaken by the outside world. Because when you stop reacting emotionally, you start acting strategically. You become the kind of person that everyone watches but no one can read. You say less, you listen more, you observe everything without giving away a single thing. And that kind of control, it terrifies anyone still living in their emotional world. Isn't that just being numb? No, there's a big difference between emotional suppression and emotional control. Suppression means ignoring or avoiding your emotions. Control means mastering when, how, and why you express them. You don't pretend you don't feel. You just master the art of feeling things internally without showing them when it's not the right time. That's what separates a warrior from a victim. Machiavelli didn't want to be numb. He wanted to be untouchable. So he trained in thought, posture, and silence. The moment you learn to feel nothing on command, you don't just gain power, you become power itself. Machiavelli wasn't born detached. He was crafted by humiliation, betrayal, exile, and being erased by those he once trusted with a smile. His political life was wiped out in days, not because he made mistakes, but because power shifted and loyalty became meaningless. So what would most people do in that situation? Cry, collapse, beg for their job back, apologize, ask for forgiveness, but not Machiavelli. He watched, learned, and detached. He understood that emotions made you loyal to people who didn't deserve it. After all, they only love you till you're inconvenient, and that's a bitter pill, because every betrayal starts with, "I thought they WOULDN, single quotes T. It's a phrase that reveals trust, and trust comes from emotion. But Machiavelli saw something colder. People are loyal only so long as loyalty doesn't come at a cost. When the cost is too high, they turn. Emotion doesn't stop betrayal, it blinds you to the signs of it, and Machiavelli refused to be blind again. His turning point wasn't rage, it was realization. He wrote The Prince not out of revenge, but out of clarity. He didn't whine about the unfairness of the world. He documented how power really works, and how most people aren't strong enough to admit it. You might think you're emotionally intelligent because you feel deeply, but true emotional intelligence is feeling deeply and still acting with cold clarity. Machiavelli trained for that. So how do you get there? How do you go from being emotionally reactive to emotionally unshakable? It doesn't start with quotes or philosophies. It starts with your pain. Look back at your own life. Who used you? Who lied to you? Who disappeared as soon as you weren't useful? What did you feel? Shame, grief, rage, confusion. That pain isn't just trauma. It's data. It's your training ground. Every betrayal is a message. Stop letting people see what they don't deserve to hold. Every disappointment is a reminder. Your expectations are like emotional hostages. Machiavelli didn't numb himself. He studied his pain until it didn't control him anymore. He dissected human behavior like a surgeon, rewired his instincts, turned heartbreak into pattern recognition. Now, when someone smiles too quickly, praises you too eagerly, or agrees too fast, he doesn't feel warmth, he feels caution. Because once you learn from pain, you stop falling into the same traps. You can't build immunity by hiding. You build it by exposure. Machiavelli didn't isolate himself. He stayed close to power, corruption, deceit. But instead of absorbing it emotionally, he observed it like a scientist. He trained his mind to watch, not react, to record, not collapse, to stay quiet while others spilled all their feelings. And over time, emotions stopped making decisions. For him, they became signals, layers of intel, not steering wheels. That's what you're building now. Emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel without being owned by what you feel. Machiavelli didn't seek peace by escaping emotion. He wanted power, because once you master your emotions, you automatically master others. Why? Because everyone else is still controlled by what you've neutralized. People want to be liked. They need to feel understood. They respond to triggers. They speak when nervous. They confess when afraid. You don't do any of that anymore. You become still. And in that stillness, you gain authority. In any group, the person who talks first is usually trying to impress. The interrupter is nervous about being forgotten. The one who over-explains worries they won't be understood. The louder they need to be heard, the more they're losing. Now watch the one who waits. They don't rush or react. They speak slowly and with purpose. When they do speak, everyone listens, not because they're loud, but because they have weight, gravitas. That's Machiavellian presence. He who controls himself, controls others. Your self-control is their emotional mirror. If you stay calm, they second-guess their tone. If you don't flinch, they wonder if they went too far. If you don't chase closure, they spiral trying to figure you out. The more detached you are, the more power others accidentally hand you. Because when you speak less, people panic in the silence. And to break the tension, they start talking, they confess, justify, they reveal more than you ever asked for. Silence feels like judgment, like power, like you know something they don't. So instead of reading them, you let them read themselves out loud. And the best part, you never gave anything away. People expect a cause and effect. They insult you, you react. They guilt you, you apologize. They beg, you soften. They ghost, you chase. That's how emotional people get played. They operate on visible triggers, on the surface. But when you stop reacting, you become a game-changer, pattern breaker. Now, they don't know what you're thinking, what you'll do next, how you feel inside, or when you'll make your move. You've introduced uncertainty, and uncertainty breaks control. You stop playing their game and start controlling the board. Let's be clear, detachment is not the same as apathy. You still care. You still want things. You still feel. You've just removed their external access to your feelings. They can't predict your next move. They can't read your face. They can't sense your weakness. They can't time their manipulation. Only you know what's happening inside, and everyone else can only guess. And guesswork, it always creates fear, because the person who can't be read, they are always assumed to be more powerful. Ever notice how the quietest people in the room are usually the ones no one wants to mess with? That's not charisma. That's emotional control expressed physically. When you speak slowly, react sparingly, move with purpose, hold eye contact without tension, and sit still while others squirm, you broadcast dominance without saying a word. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just solid, anchored, while others drift desperate to stabilize themselves around your presence. And the more they float, the more they orbit you. Machiavelli didn't find this stillness meditating on some mountaintop. No, he trained in the chaos of courts, in conversations, in conflict. Because emotional control isn't built in peace, it's built-in war. You don't learn to stay calm when you're alone. You learn it when you're challenged, tested, provoked. You choose silence anyway. This is where detachment turns into discipline. Not a personality trait, not a mood, not a method. Someone insults you. Pause. They try to guilt trip you. Pause. They beg, cry, accuse, manipulate. Pause. Machiavelli trained the pause like a weapon, because in that space between stimulus and response, you regain control just of your words, but of the entire room. You become the one setting the tempo, and once you own the tempo, you own the direction. The one who speaks second always has the advantage of knowing the full field. That's not just strategy. Emotional economy. Let them waste energy. You serve yours. That alone makes you more powerful. You don't react to every tone shift. You don't internalize every insult. You don't collapse at the first sign of rejection. You watch, you catalog, you study, not to attack, but to understand. Because most people reveal their whole psychological blueprint in how they try to make you feel. If they guilt trip you, they're insecure. If they flatter you, they want control. If they ignore you, they want attention. Machiavelli treated emotion like information. Every emotional reaction is a map to someone's core fear, and every map is an advantage. If you stay silent long enough to read it, you don't owe anyone emotional clarity. If someone says, "You seem off, are you okay?" you say, "I'm processing." If they ask, "What are you thinking right now?" you say, "A lot, but nothing urgent." That's how you train your ambiguity muscle, not by being fake, but by saying less than they can use. Because clarity creates emotional vulnerability. Ambiguity creates protection. The less they know about what affects you, the more they guess, and the more they guess, the less power they have. When a conversation stops being productive, you leave. Not with drama, not with explanations, just distance. You stop replying, you stop engaging, you stop validating. Why? Every unnecessary response drains your emotional bank account. Machiavelli never let anyone keep him stuck in a loop. He'd disengage silently, because power doesn't need a closing statement, it just needs to vanish. You're in an awkward silence, people stare, you feel misunderstood. Your instinct is to fix it, fill the silence, explain, defend your intentions. Machiavelli felt that same pressure, but he sat still and unmoved. That's where the real training happens, in refusing to relieve discomfort. Because discomfort is a test, and most people fail it by overcorrecting. You win by letting others drown in tension. You've already learned to breathe inside it. Eventually, you won't have to pause, it'll be natural. You won't fake neutrality anymore. You'll live it. You won't get triggered, because they simply can't reach you. That's when you move from discipline to dominance. You've trained yourself to feel nothing when it matters most, and everything only when it serves you. You're not cold. You're precise. And in a world addicted to overreaction, precision is the highest form of power. Machiavelli's methods weren't made for temples. They were forged in courts, councils, betrayals, and the modern world. It's no different. You're not only tested in private anymore, you're tested publicly every day. Messages demanding instant emotional reaction. Social media designed to provoke and expose. Relationships weaponizing guilt, silence, and drama. Workplaces built on emotional games rather than skill. And in that chaos, emotional stillness becomes your shield, your sword, your signal. Here's how to use it precisely, and without apology, both in person and online. Someone says something to trigger you. They want your defensiveness, your anger, your emotional leak. That response gives them control. So what would Machiavelli do? Nothing. He would watch, wait, let the silence grow, and that silence, it would be louder than any scream. If a response is needed, he'd say something like, "Interesting point. If that's how you see it, I'll think about it." You give them no fight, no admission, no weakness. They leave confused because you didn't play the part they rehearsed. Whether it's a partner, a family member, or a friend, emotionally reactive people crave proof that they've affected you. They want to see you lose your cool, to witness your defensiveness, anger, or an emotional slip-up. When you raise your voice, cry, beg, or explain, they feel important. They feel in control. They feel like they've won. Machiavelli, he stayed completely composed. He wouldn't beg to be understood. He wouldn't match their energy. He wouldn't even say, "You're overreacting." He'd say something like, "We'll revisit this when emotions have cooled. I understand you need space." Let's not destroy respect to prove a point. This is not detachment. This is emotional martial arts. You learn to deflect attacks, preserve your center, and win without conflict. Someone takes a shot at you online. Maybe they bait you with comments, messages, or indirect posts. The world pressures you to clap back, defend your name, or explain yourself quickly. But Machiavelli would never do that. He knew that he who speaks first looks defensive, he who speaks last appears decisive, and the one who says nothing, untouchable. Let people rant, let others watch, because your silence becomes a roar louder than any words. To some you come off as dignified, to others, mysterious, and to your enemies, terrifying. You didn't defend yourself, you made them look obsessed, and that is power. You will run into people who confuse love with control. They'll say things like, "If you don't tell me right now, it means you don't care. Why won't you just be vulnerable? You used to share everything with me." Translation: I can't control you anymore, and that scares me. Machiavelli felt no need to explain his silence because his love, like his strategy, was deliberate and not reactive. He didn't respond to pressure, he responded to patterns. If someone constantly weaponizes emotional leverage against you, you don't owe them openness, you owe them distance. Emotional stillness teaches people how to treat you, not with words, but with resistance. You don't react, you reposition. And the people who can't respect that, they're not qualified to stay in your life. Your name is being spoken in rooms you're not even in. You're being framed, doubted, redefined. You want to speak out, to prove who you really are. But Machiavelli wouldn't fight lies. He'd flood them with results. He'd outperform, outlast, and outgrow. Because when you engage rumors, you validate them. But when you ignore them, and rise anyway, you turn critics into footnotes. And history never remembers footnotes. Over time, you'll notice people stop pushing your buttons, because those buttons no longer work. Drama avoids you because it can't feed off your energy anymore. Influence grows not because you demanded it, but because people feel safer around someone they can't control. You become the person who knows when to speak, how to pause, how to command with calmness, and how to rule without raising your voice. And in today's chaotic world, that makes you dangerous in the quietest way possible. Let's correct one big misconception. You're not becoming heartless, you're becoming whole. Because Machiavelli didn't train to feel less, he trained to feel on his own terms. His goal wasn't emotional numbness, it was emotional sovereignty. The ability to own every emotion without being owned by any of them. And that's when detachment becomes a superpower. Most people confuse stillness with repression. They think if you're not expressing rage, you're bottling it up. If you're not showing tears, you're hiding your pain. If you don't explain yourself, you're emotionally unavailable. But Machiavelli would say, the strongest feelings are the ones that don't need witnesses. True power is when you feel anger and don't lash out. You feel sadness and still speak clearly. You feel pressure and still move with precision. That's not apathy, that's mastery. They told you emotional intelligence was about naming your emotions, sharing how you feel, understanding how others feel. That's great if you want to fit in, but if you want to lead, command, and outlast, emotional intelligence looks different. It means not leaking under pressure, not reacting to manipulation, reading others without being readable yourself. It's no longer about expressing feelings, it's about strategically managing their visibility. And in Machiavelli's world, being emotionally visible without control was lethal. Empathy isn't weakness, but uncontrolled empathy is. Reactive empathy is feeling bad and immediately trying to fix the other person. It's mirroring someone's pain without checking their motives. It's saying, I understand, even when they're attacking you. Strategic empathy is different. It's understanding someone's emotional state and using that information as data, not absorbing it blindly. You can listen and care without letting someone's emotion dictate your own motion. That's what Machiavelli mastered, using emotions as intel, not instructions. Life is noisy, people are impulsive, the world is addicted to emotional reaction. So how does Machiavelli respond? With distance, not because he's cold, but because chaos doesn't deserve your warmth. If someone is yelling, guilt-tripping, performing for attention, or acting emotionally violent, you don't fix it, you don't debate it, you pull away. That's not giving up. That's protecting your signal. You don't let emotional static distort your frequency. Machiavelli didn't believe in detachment for its own sake. He believed in detachment that filters what's real. Because if you're reactive, you love people who confuse you. You chase people who ghost you. You serve people who exploit your kindness. But when you become still, you don't chase, you observe, you don't prove, you wait, you don't beg, you listen. Most people fail those tests because they were never meant to sit beside your stillness. They were only loud enough to be noticed in your chaos. The moment you stop feeling everything for everyone, you begin seeing everyone for what they really are, and that's when detachment becomes vision. You don't crash into emotional immunity with fireworks. You arrive quietly, and one day you realize, this would have shattered me before, but now you feel nothing you didn't choose to feel. That's when you know you're not just surviving emotional chaos, you're governing it. When to feel. This is the ultimate shift. You stop letting the world dictate your emotions. You take back control and become the one deciding what feelings are allowed to surface, and when, because real power doesn't come from hiding your feelings or pretending you don't have them, it comes from being indifferable, from becoming a puzzle. No one can solve. No one can destroy what they can't define. No one controls what they can't read, and no one manipulates someone who refuses to flinch. You don't explain your peace. You don't defend your boundaries. You don't chase after closure. You move on your terms. Speak only when it truly matters. Disappear when it's time. Return without excuses, and command without trying. And when people ask, how did you become like this? You just say, I stopped letting the world teach me how to feel, and started teaching myself when to feel. Machiavelli's life wasn't just a political struggle. It was a personal battle to master himself in an unpredictable world. He trained himself to be a fortress, emotionally unassailable. That's what made him dangerous. That's what makes you dangerous. This isn't about turning off your heart or becoming some cold, unfeeling robot. It's about evolution. It's about becoming whole. Because the truth is, emotions aren't the enemy. The enemy is becoming owned by them. Anyone can get emotional. The rare and powerful individual learns to feel without giving away their power. Imagine what that could do. You'd become the mystery no one can figure out. The person people orbit but can't control. The calm at the center of every storm. That's where true influence lies. You don't need to yell louder or make a scene to be heard. You just need to be unshakable, to watch quietly, while others lose their cool, to listen deeply, while others talk over each other, to pause in moments where everyone else rushes. That kind of presence doesn't come overnight. It's earned through pain, through betrayal, through relentless practice, through learning to sit in discomfort without flinching, through turning heartbreak into data, and through mastering the silence where power grows. The world today is full of noise. People scramble to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. But validation is a drug, and emotional reaction is the crash. Machiavelli's lesson: don't get hooked on that high. Stay sober of emotion. Feel when it serves you. Remain still when it doesn't. Because in a world addicted to noise, your calm becomes a weapon, your silence becomes a signal, and your control becomes a kind of power no one can touch. So the next time you feel that urge to react fast, pause. Breathe. Remember Machiavelli. Feel without flinching. Own your emotions without them owning you. That's how you win, truly win, not just in politics, but in life. When people ask, how did you become like this? You simply say, I stopped letting the world teach me how to feel, and started teaching myself when to feel. That's the essence of true emotional sovereignty. It's not about being emotionless or cold. It's about being the master of your own inner world, choosing what emotions to let in, when to express them, and when to hold them close as your secret strength. Machiavelli's life teaches us that emotional mastery isn't just a personal shield, it's a strategic weapon. It's how you become untouchable in a world full of chaos, betrayal, and manipulation. You don't have to be the loudest, the angriest, or the most dramatic to command respect. You just have to be steady, deliberate, and unreadable. When you achieve that, people can't help but notice. They orbit your calm like planets around a sun, and in that orbit, you hold real power. So here's the takeaway: feel deeply, but act intentionally. Let your emotions fuel your strategy, not sabotage it. Build calmness in the storm. Master your reactions, and when faced with triggers, pause. Observe. Choose your move wisely, because emotions are a battlefield, and those who master them don't. just survive, they win. You can be that person, not by shutting down, but by mastering the art of emotional control, by becoming the person who rules their emotions, instead of being ruled by them. That's how Machiavelli walked the earth. And that's how you can walk your path with unshakable power.